Hi, everyone. This is your host, Jess James, and this is Resilient and Rowdy. Last week, I went to Bourbiz, like I told y'all, and got to meet some incredible people, some new faces, and one of them is Ricky Deering. Ricky, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Jess. And same thing at Burbaz. I met some incredible people and so fortunate to meet you. And we talked about this podcast and we said we were going to do it and we both followed through. So this is awesome.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you were on board. But what I really loved about my interaction with you was just how like inspirational, motivational you were. And you kind of got into the nitty gritty with me, but I just find you very inspiring. So I feel like um, with the extensive background that you have, that you definitely have something amazing for other folks to listen to, if they're active duty or if they're civilian. You definitely bring a lot of things to the table. So I would just love to get into who you are and what brought you to become the man that you are today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like I told you, I usually tell it straight to veterans, spouses, transitioning soldiers.
Mm.
It's a difficult process. I've been through it and I'm as honest and transparent as I can be. I share my best practices and things that I've learned that are, successful for me. And I'm excited to share that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's so important and so necessary, especially like in the veteran sphere. We want to see other veterans succeed and get their piece of the pie. It really hurts like on a personal level when we see folks kind of get into struggles and not seeing their worth and other endeavors that might not ever come to the table, but you've kind of been through a little bit of that. So um I guess do you want to talk about like what brought you to join the army and step up to that level of becoming a Green Beret? Because that's like, I mean, that's not something that you take lightly. I think that's really awesome that you put yourself up to that challenge. So I think that kind of also could entail on who your character is, like what kind of man you are and what kind of legacy you want to leave behind. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, becoming a Green Beret is like, it's bigger than yourself. It's something that's, part of a community that you work so hard to be part of, and there's such a standard to uphold that I love to be able to talk about it and be able to represent that. And not only that, like how can anybody in the military, whether you're a Green Beret or like a soldier who's enlisted or an officer, like bring all your skills from the military into the corporate world? And I
Mm.
think, for me being a Green Beret, I've been able to do that. But it starts with like, why did I join the military? Like my grandfather was a Vietnam. He was actually a Korean War, Vietnam War vet. When I was a kid, I wasn't raised by my parents, like my mom and my dad. I was raised by my grandparents, and they took me in. And I always had this calling to join the service. My grandfather always led the way in that. And actually, he didn't want me to join.
Yeah.
He had PTSD from Vietnam and Korea, and back then a lot of the soldiers back then, that was kind of faux pas to say that, you were weak or like you had PTSD or you had all these things going on from the service. It was almost a way of like admitting a weakness as a man. So I grew up with that as like my grandfather. And he never wanted me to join, never told me that's why, but I was just so passionate about it. I appealed to my grandmother. So I always say like the higher command, and, she intervened and somehow the decision worked out. So when I was 17, my grandfather signed for me to join the military. Went to basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia as an infantryman. And I just joined just to do the college stuff. I was like, I'm just going to
Okay.
go to college, do my 4 years. You know, I promise you I'll do college. I had to make that promise to my grandmother and my grandfather that I'll go to college.
Okay.
Joined. Then I went to Ranger School. Then I went to Special Forces. I went to Afghanistan 4 times, Iraq once, Pakistan, and a year in Kyrgyzstan too. So spent all kinds of time deployed, did some great things. I still got my degree in the end. Like I got a master's degree in
Oh,
leadership.
wow.
So I went through on that commitment, but at the same time, like, my walk into the military, my approach in the military wasn't like to spend 15 years in. It was like do
Right.
4 years, go to college. And I loved what I was doing. And I just
Yeah.
felt this passion to keep doing more. And
Mm.
fortunately, I was able to be a ranger and a Green Beret, a jump master, sniper, lurse. Like I got to do so many things that brought me so many skills that not only made me successful in the military, that it also makes me successful today.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that. And now I'm out, I'm retired. And, I've been able to work for not only like, you go Fortune 500, Fortune 20, Fortune 10. I've worked for 2 Fortune 5 companies already. And I think that a lot that I've learned about being in the military, my skills and stuff, I've been able to translate that.
Yeah, and that's key. So that way your civilian employer can fully see what you're capable of instead of just being confused when they look at your resume or your background. And that way they kind of get a better understanding of how you can fit into, their team, that sector or what have you, instead of kind of seeing you as like the odd duckling or the outlier or something like that.
Yeah.
If
And I
anything.
think there's a lot of stigma associated just in the military with PTSD, TBI, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
it definitely translates into the corporate world too.
Yeah.
And corporate America is doing a great job of trying to train their leaders to understand that it's not something that's going to limit that person from being like a contributor to the organization, but how do we deal with that and navigate that because it's so new and we
It
have so much
really is.
technology behind it now where we didn't have that before, so much
Mhm.
knowledge and information where now it's becoming more of a thing that's going to be able to be something that's recognized and something that is going to be where more veterans can be open about it and be okay with it.
Exactly, the communication is huge. I know I've definitely had to kinda just, like, talk about that with, like, my boss before, like, if I felt like I had limitations, if anything, that was probably, like, my own, um, bias kind of, like, in the way, and so he was able to mentor me out of that and getting me out of that mindset, and so I could show up better day to day, at work, and, like, having that kind of guidance is absolutely like life changing. So, were you kind of like aware of that when you were starting to like transition out of active duty and into, the civilian world? Were you kind of concerned about that holding you back? And if you did, like, what did you do about that?
Yeah, I've always said that veterans go through an identity crisis, especially veterans who've been in the military for, 4, 6, 10, 15 years, 20 years, and they retire. They go through an identity crisis because their whole culture, their whole idea of working is from the military, right? The military already sets inside the fact that if you show up at 9 a.m., like you've already done PT, that's already allocated in your day.
Mm,
Corporate America doesn't care about that. Like,
right.
I don't care if you did PT. Like, good for you. Like, awesome. But in the military, that's like an important thing. And you have to adjust to that, especially like your old school vets where we showed up to formation. Excuse me, we did PT, we ran, we went to the DFAC, we showed up at 9 a.m., like place of duty, like all that stuff. So you have to adjust yourself that like corporate America doesn't think the same way. So a lot of veterans are going to go through a portion where you're in an identity crisis. Like, how do I fit in? This
Right.
is all I know. Especially, for someone like me, I was 17 years old when I joined the military. I was 33, 34 when I got out. I only knew one way of life, and that was the
Yeah.
military way of life. So you go through an identity crisis. And even for me as a Green Beret, I went through an even more identity crisis because when you're trained as a Green Beret or a Ranger, like you're trained to be someone who is unbreakable, someone who can accomplish anything, someone who can do any mission at any point in time and go through all this. And then when you go through PTSD and you go through TBI and you start like, not breaking down, but like, I can't keep going this way anymore. Like you go through an identity, like, who am I?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to conflict with that when you get out of the military as well. You can't just like transition into a new role and be a new person. You have to deal
Yeah.
with like that metamorphosis, so to speak, into like something, new and better, or like you take from everything like a butterfly type of metamorphosis thing that you got to go through.
Yeah, hey, that's actually a really great like metaphor to use,
Right.
because if someone forces that cocoon open, then you won't the butterfly doesn't have the strength to fly and like break
Yeah.
through.
It's like a butterfly,
Um,
right? They go through a cocoon. The wings come internally. That whole cocoon,
mhm,
everything comes internally. Like they almost eat. They almost, if you look it up, like the metamorphosis process with a butterfly, like they regurgitate and eat themselves, and then the wings come out. It comes from internal, and now you're almost like a new identity. You can fly, but your
yeah,
wings came from everything that you had inside at that time. So you see a
yeah,
creepy crawler caterpillar who is walking around eating leaves, who all of a sudden
mhm,
cocoons itself,
yeah,
gets into this world and comes out flying. And it's the
yeah.
same,
It's the
type of
same thing.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, it's that warrior mentality that we've been touching on is that it's okay to get help, it's okay to feel these things, like, you've been going go, go, go for so many years that you've never really had to think about yourself, and now, like, it's definitely worth that time to invest to get better, to improve, because
Mhm.
I felt like when I got out, I definitely experienced that too, and I felt like it was just easier to blend in with other broken veterans, but really like we're all way more than that, you know. We might have, you know, our little cricks and cracks and stuff here and there, but we're still fully capable and can show up and can bring so much to the table. It's just getting out of that mentality of what was from the past and now embracing the future, which is absolutely scary because like you've mentioned, it's nothing that we've ever known, but
Right.
breaking out of that will help you at least like immerse yourself better into that culture and in that community. If you like keep your whoopee like wrapped around you like a cocoon, like you're not going to break out of your own shell type of thing. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that because again, like especially for you know, Green Berets or Rangers, that kind of like go go go, like I'm strong, I'm capable, I can do it, definitely comes at a fault, and it's okay to take a breather, you know, drink some water, and also acknowledge that you know, you've been through some stuff, and sitting
Yeah.
with those thoughts can be difficult, but it's kind of what you do with it. So again, you could fall deep into a very dark place, or you can acknowledge that and use that as more of a way to inspire you to keep going, because I felt like I was holding on to a lot of things more as burdens, and
Yeah.
especially getting older. um I'm sure you've had, you know, some friends pass along the way, but for me, it was very difficult getting older and getting to an age that my friends didn't make it to. So,
Mhm.
if anything, I was kind of using that as like a crutch, but if anything, I should be able to feel, you know, confident in myself that I can get older and move and progress through life without feeling shame or guilty
Yeah.
because I'm still here type of thing. So,
Yeah. And it's not only about being a ranger and a Green Beret in the military. It's about in general, like life and society. There's people who've been, raped, abused, like been in some difficult situations that PTSD isn't just you go to war and get shot at. PTSD is you're in a car accident. You were in a fight. You were so many things happen. So people go through that, and you have to understand that if you don't deal with it and you don't process those things, it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And it's just something you have to go through. So it's not only about being a ranger and a Green Beret and figuring out your identity. It's about like everybody understanding that, a majority of people are going to go through this. How do we share that, remove the stigma, allow people to like go through their mental, health and, just get better
I think
overall. But
it's
at the end of the
also
day, you have to be vulnerable.
yeah, I think it's also just allowing them that humanity. I think when I kind of like specify like you know, like very special elite groups, I think it's because y'all don't let yourselves
Right.
like let that
Be
guard
weak.
down. So
Yeah.
you know, I've had plenty of close friends there, and I'm grateful that I can be a place of solace for them, but I felt like I was like, hey, like I think you're being too hard on yourself. Like you're human after all. Like
Yeah, it's
you
hard.
you've done some awesome things. Um but now that it's like time to reflect and all that, like don't let that hang you up on.
It's almost like a family. The last thing you want to do is to admit that like, you're weaker or that you're not going to be able to contribute or make
Right.
someone think that you're not going to be able to
To show
accomplish
up.
your job or show up.
Yes,
You can still show
exactly.
up. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to show up, just I got some shit going on, but I'm going to be there. And we all have
Yeah.
that, right? Like,
Yeah.
but in that environment and in that, like, to your point, eliteness, like it's like a football team. Like, you're showing up, but like you got to show up at a different level, and
Yeah.
you're accountable to everybody around you to a level that you probably don't experience in like corporate America or
Right.
anywhere.
Yeah, like
It's
that
hard. It's
mask
a
that
high threshold.
for sure, for sure. That mask that you were so comfortable with, like, using and putting on isn't
Yeah.
gonna help you here. But it's those things that they don't really mention that in Soldier for Life, you know? So those transitioning programs
Right.
are really helpful, and I remember making the most of that program, and I was going into college, but I still, did everything, did the resume, did the MOS, like, translator stuff, and
Right.
really just utilizing the heck out of it, but they didn't really mention that other stuff. And so I felt like his warrior mentality got put on me. As much as I appreciated that, but it was just like, no, like, hey, I'm allowed to be sad, but I can actually just use this and help other people instead of carrying it like a burden, like I'm saying. So like there's like I don't know, all the pieces of the puzzle eventually all fit together. It's just
Right.
whether or not you're wanting to find the meaning. But when we talk about these things, I think that we can fully prepare other folks for what may come eventually, and giving themselves that grace, but also like hyping them back up to be like, hey, dude, you still bring so much to the table. Like, you're not this broken person that you think you are.
Right.
So when you talk to others, do you like how do you like help prepare them for success? Like, we mentioned, like, getting everything set up with the resume, your LinkedIn, like headshots. Like I mentioned, the devils and the details, and I feel like with your background and you personally, you're very good at that. So how do you help others kind of see their worth and their value so that they can show up to corporate America and kick ass and take names?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the military has great like benefits, opportunities that they give you when you go through TAP and like whatever it is now. When I went through in 2015, whatever that was, now you have like career skills programs, you have
Mhm.
like apprenticeship programs. Definitely get into those. If your command can let you leave for 6 months and get into an organization and work there for free and do
Yeah.
that, like that would be amazing, because you're going to be able to get in, you're going to be able to learn the culture, you're going to be able to, identify with people, identify with leaders who can help hire you, or, you know, um, help you get into positions you want to get into. Or you could realize like this job sucks, I don't want to get
Mhm.
involved in this, right?
Right.
But sometimes you can take a job you hate and you're stuck in it. So those types of programs that the military offers, always get into those. Like that's the first and foremost. Do those.
Mm.
Resumes. I always say with resumes, I do a lot of veteran resumes. You can find me on Veterati every Friday. Sorry, my dog's down here. Every
That's
Friday,
okay.
2 hours of open time for veterans where I help them with their resume, help them get their jobs. Your resume should be less military specific, more leader specific, more um, more qualitative than and quantitative. Like how many people did you lead? How much money were you responsible for? 10 people, 30 people. Instead of saying you were a field artillery battery commander, you led this many troops, you led this many people. If you can convert that for corporate America, that's going to be a lot easier on them to understand the value that you bring.
Yeah.
And the military kind of does that, but at the end of the day, you have to also eschew yourself from the military. What you did in the military for 15 years matters, but corporate America is going to think about it different, right? You
Yeah.
have just as many people. Like I've worked for a Fortune 2 and Fortune 5 company now. I have people in that company who's worked there for 30 years,
Mm.
right? Like they have just as much seniority as, a colonel or a sergeant major. And
Mm.
you can't come as a regular civilian and be at that level. So you have to also adjust and know that, like, even though you're military and it's civilian, there's a similar type of seniority process. There's a similar type of interview process that goes on with that. So I
Wow.
know I said a lot right there, so I'll pause.
Yeah, that is a lot, but it's kind of like almost like a timeline of things on how to fully make sure that you show up. Kind of like how we mentioned, when you show up at 9 o'clock, like you already did your PT, your personal hygiene, and all like that. In corporate America, they're expecting you to do the same and showing up that you've checked all the boxes, that you've made sure that you've got
Yeah.
everything that you need. And same with just even applying for jobs. There's a very distinct way to go about things.
Right.
Not to limit you, but it's literally just the ABCs of success. So
Mhm.
the fact that you can just like lay that out and explain
Yeah.
that to people is I mean huge. Because it doesn't matter how old you are when you're transitioning from a different career to another. It's just basic knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always use, I use an old Ranger School format: situation, mission, execution, sustainment. Like, what's your situation? You need to get a job.
Yep.
What's the mission? Figure out the mission. How are you going to execute it? And how are you going to sustain it throughout that time? So
Yep.
you can take that practice and apply it when you interview, when you apply, and you're reviewing companies. I was very big on, as a Green Beret, I was always big on, if I went into an objective, I knew who was there, the enemy, friendlies. I knew everything. You should know the same thing. If you interview for a company, you should know who the CEO is, who the VP is, who the CEO is. You should know everybody. So if that comes up in an interview, you know that. And then if it doesn't come up in an interview, you can say that, like, hey, I know the CEO said this last week, right? Like, you should know everything about that situation if you're very serious about getting a job.
Mm,
And a lot of veterans won't do that work because, as I said before, like, I'm honest about it. They walk in the situation, I'm a veteran, I should be hired. You have to
mm,
do the homework behind it. You have to do the legwork to understand the company. But guess what? You already have those skills that a lot
mhm.
of civilians have never had. So you can
Yeah.
really distinguish yourself if you can do that type of stuff. One of my first interviews, like a real interview, was with a Fortune 5 company. I showed up with a SWOT analysis. If you know what a SWOT analysis is, it's strength, weaknesses, opportunities. I showed up with a 5-page report on that company, and I was like, here's where we're at. And right away had an offer ready to go. You have to think that way. It's just like doing a mission in the military.
Wow.
Have that in
Wow.
you.
Yeah, that's I mean, absolutely like, just setting yourself up for like the best successful scenario possible. And knowledge is power. And when you really take that time to get into those details, whether you can use them at that moment or not, it's still an indicator of that effort. Um, and I don't like that sense of entitlement. I mean, from anyone, period, but especially if you're a veteran. The way I see it is like if you're a veteran, you should still try to make and put that effort into making yourself as marketable as possible. Like, what else do you bring to the table?
If you look at my LinkedIn, I got a special forces buddy that did a professional photo for me. I think it was like $300. I could share his name, but
Yeah,
still,
sure.
like, that $300 is going to carry you so far. Like a
Yeah,
professional photo.
they
I
look
always
amazing.
hate when I see veterans who are in their military uniform. Corporate America is not, like, I'll tell you guys, corporate America, they love it, but like, that does not translate.
Yeah,
You have to, they, not only through your interview process, they have to see you and envision you as being a person that's going to lead like teams and people around you. And although your military uniform is very distinguished and a big part of like what we do, remove that from that process.
right.
Get a professional photo, do like the right thing, and don't be in your uniform.
Yep.
That's my biggest thing. Like, don't be in your uniform. You can go to my
Yep.
LinkedIn. I got a professional photo. It will bring you so much value because people are going to, right, envision you being part of their organization, all
Right.
those things. Where who walks around a company and sees someone walk around in a military uniform other than the military, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
it's not to take away from what you're doing in the success, but you have to sell yourself at this point. You have to brand yourself,
Yeah.
and that's not going to do it. So yeah, it's the same thing. Like, you have to remove yourself from that, get professional photos, do your branding on LinkedIn, all
Mhm.
the social media.
Yeah, and yeah, your headshots look amazing, and choosing like complementary colors. Again, the devil's in the details is like so key. And yeah, unfortunately, the LinkedIn is a big factor. Some folks don't really want to use it because they kind of see it as another social media platform, but that's where you can market yourself and also meet and congregate with other folks that are, on their way up. And if you need that inspiration, like I actually kind of like getting on LinkedIn, like um I don't know, like I said, like I'm inspired. I see ways that I can improve. I see people who are continuously working on themselves, and I love that, and that's something that I want to implement into my daily like mantra. So I think when you surround yourself with folks that are doing it in the right way instead of a very cocky, entitled type
Mhm.
of manner, I think you can really set yourself up for more successful interactions and business like endeavors.
I think a lot of veterans, and I'll say like special forces, you want to get into like the contract stuff, right? Like that's our thing, especially special forces. Oh, contract. Wow.
Yeah,
I don't have to do all the work. I'm gonna get in a contract. I got the contract, like I'm good.
yeah,
And then, a contract only lasts for so long. And then you have a lot of government involved with that. You have a lot of policies involved with that. So that's not something, as I said, mission, execution, sustainment. Like, is that going to really sustain you? Can you really sit there? And I've told a lot of friends this, can you really sit there in the next 15 years and tell me that what you're doing now is going to sustain you and your family all that time? You may be getting paid a little bit more than you thought you were, but is it going to really last that long? And if it does, that's only a select few that does happen for. So,
mhm,
what decisions are you making that's going to sustain you? And like a lot of veterans will get into that where they're going to go into the contract business and then they don't have to update profiles, they don't have to brand themselves. And then you get into a point where the contract ends and then they're screwed because this whole time they haven't been branding themselves and they're like, oh shit, like I'm in the last minute,
yeah,
2 minutes, like I need a job, like what am I going to do? Like, no, you need to be
yup,
branding yourself from day one. The minute you're getting out of the army, start branding yourself. Start
yeah.
saying who you are, what you mean, your purpose, your direction, everything you stand for, all of that. Because if you don't, like you have nothing else to fall back on. I'd rather go with, the sustainment. If I could get myself in a corporate job that is aligned with what I did in the military or my skills and keep that going for 10 years, I'd rather do that than, take an extra 20K, like at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, some people again get caught up in it, and that is okay. That's their journey, um but then they kind of wonder why they're at where they're at, or where those suck points come from. But would you say that there's more like personal and like professional development that you did while you were trying to, kind of smooth the edges while you're like applying to these corporate or civilian jobs? Like what was that journey like for you, taking your first civilian job, and like your personal and like professional feelings about it, like were, because I feel like you have a very humble mentality, which is awesome. But for some folks, they see as the next civilian or their civilian job upcoming as like a step down or something like that. But you can't necessarily correlate your military experience or your other life experiences into something like that.
Yeah, so while I was in the military, I got my bachelor's degree. And then before I got out and I knew I was going to retire, I started making moves to get my master's degree. I got my master's degree in leadership. And I knew that that broad approach to leadership was going to be such a selling factor in corporate
Mhm.
America because it's just leadership in general. So it doesn't
Right.
mean I have to lead in project management or retail or, medical or whatever. Like I specialize in leadership. I can build teams. I can lead teams. I can lead teams in the worst case scenarios ever possible. You ever want me to talk about it? I can tell you stories where I've led teams through some crazy shit, right?
Yeah.
And I have the practical and the academic. So I was big on getting my degree, which makes you marketable in corporate America, right? So, like, do not think that, to your point, that because you're in the military, taking a step like you're above everyone in corporate America right now has a degree. They've been there for 10, 15, 20 years. They've grinded it out just like you, maybe not the same, but they've done that. So
Mm.
you have to put yourself like equitable to them, like same education, same experience, and then relate that experience. So
Yeah.
for me, that was like the biggest point. Like, I have that experience now. How do I relate it to you
Mm.
and convert that into, I led this many people, I led this, I led that. So at the end of the day, with all of that, get your degree. Make sure that you're big on getting your degree when you get out, but be humble too, to like, and be open to doing, not open to doing different things, but opening to not like pigeonholing yourself into a job that you don't think you should be a part of, right? Like a lot of veterans will do that. They're like, oh, this job isn't going to pay me what I think it is. It's beneath me. It could be a job that's 60K and you think you're going to make 90K, but that job could lead to so many other opportunities,
Yep.
right? And you're going to pigeonhole yourself out of that because you think you're better than that, or your leadership's better than that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a job you need that's going to give you the foot in the door that's going to lead to other opportunities. And I share the
Yeah.
story that I had an interview with a colonel when I worked for a company, and they loved him. He did a great job on the interview, except the salary wasn't going to be the same.
Mm.
And I brought it up to him and said, listen, at the end of the day, if you came into the military with your experience, I'm sitting next to a VP, and this VP came into you come into civilian world with your experience, and the VP comes into your world with his experience. Are they going to pay each of you the same? No, like the military is not going to do that. The military is not going to bring someone in and pay them like a colonel. Why would corporate America do that? Right.
Yeah.
So it's the same exact thing. You have to humble yourself to a certain degree. But at the end of the day, in corporate America, if you want to be a colonel and paid like a colonel, it's not going to take as long. Right.
Yeah.
In the military, that everyone who's a military listener will know you got to be in the military maybe 15, 16, 17 years to be a colonel
Yeah.
and paid like a colonel.
Yep.
In America, you could do that in 5 years, 2. So it's different. So a lot of soldiers won't humble themselves and put themselves in a role that's going to make them successful for the long term.
Mm.
And they're going to miss out on a huge opportunity that they're
No,
about.
100%, 100%, because their ego's in the way. So,
Exactly.
I'm really glad that you can like really put that into terms, for folks to understand that, um, you know, or changing careers, just period. You're gonna get into some entry level jobs that you might feel like you're above or you're better than,
Yeah.
but you can show up to those jobs and kick ass at those jobs, and hopefully get shake
Yeah.
some hands, meet some people because of your work ethic. Like,
Yeah.
it's what you bring to the table, no matter like what that may be. So that's something that I've had to, um, definitely incorporate into my mentality as well. It's like,
Yeah.
don't minimize yourself, or don't diminish it. Just
Mhm.
show up and do your best at it, and it can lead to way better things.
Yeah. One of my
um,
first interviews outside of the military, like I did a bunch of interviews outside of the military, and we can get into that after this, but I did one of my first interviews that got me into like successful career. I took a lower salary than I ever got paid in the military. And I told that person, if I take this and do this, are you going to help me navigate corporate society, corporate culture? Are you going to help me be successful? Because that's also important too. Like, it's like navigating a mountain and you got a team leader in front of you leading the way. Like, this is where we're going. Like, I got
yeah.
you. Like,
Mhm.
and this person was in the military too. So I knew that even though I got paid less, the value in that situation with that I had a person helping me navigate was so important. And I'll tell you, since then, I've doubled my salary, all of that, because I've had a person that's helped me guide me through corporate culture who also was in the military. So you might find that person. You might find a person that, someone's like, oh man, this salary sucks. I can't do this. But like, this person would really help me be successful, but I don't know if I want to take this risk. Take that risk.
Mm.
Take the risk, because guess what? We've taken way more risks than that. And that was my mindset. Like, this doesn't work out, I'll figure it out after. And it worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. So yeah, tell me about the how interviews went for you and what the interview process was like, all the little tweaks that you've had to make sure that you can show up to an interview and like rock it.
Yeah, so my process was the only time I knew about an interview was like Soldier of the Month board or like right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, oh, I got this. Like right face, left face, about turn.
Yeah.
That's all we know. Like, tap and all that's not going to teach you. You have to go through a talking process. You're not told to sell yourself in the military. Like if you know a TM manual or like, Audie Murphy stuff, like you're
Yeah.
the best. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean,
America
no,
doesn't care about that shit.
that's probably my problem. I didn't know how
Yeah.
to sell myself, but I knew how to sell a striker.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
man, yeah,
Yeah.
but
You're like, I know all the weapons. I can take them apart really quick. Like I've trained.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you have to
But
practice. You have to go through that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I applied to a lot of places. I did a bunch of interviews
Mhm.
just so I could get the practice, right? Like,
Okay.
what are they looking for? What do they need? What are they asking for? How do I relate my stuff? And I came up with like a rhythm and like a way to, sell myself and say, oh, this is what they want to hear. These are questions they ask. So if I say this is like the counter. So you can really prep yourself in a way that, I think when you transition out of the military, they don't do that. You're not really under pressure to get a job. Like put yourself under pressure and then figure out what they want and then adjust yourself and keep it going and make it concise and make it better along the way.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. But I mean, also, I think you should kind of put some pressure on yourself when you're transitioning.
Yeah, but how do
Um,
you do that with veterans?
well, the way I put myself in was just like you don't want to be a homeless veteran. So, um,
So
and
do you
I didn't want to like it's not that it's not an option for me, but establishing my independence from a very controlling family
Mhm.
was like is huge for me. So I
Right,
have the support. I do not want to rely on it. I wanted to be able to feel like independent, especially as a
mhm.
woman, like not relying
Yeah,
on a man or significant other, whomever. So for me, it wasn't an option to fail. Like again, it didn't matter what kind of job I took as long as I could show up and do my best and bring
right,
something to the table. And professionally and personally, I feel like I enjoy bringing a very like kind of welcoming environment, and that's huge on me because in the past we've definitely been in toxic and very negative volatile environments. So the fact that I can come into my workplace and bring jokes and make everyone feel good, stuff like that, like is huge. So the way I saw it was like, if it pays the bills, like I'm gonna fucking do it, but I'm not gonna exploit myself because that's also not an option. That's
right.
not for me, like
Yeah,
so why would I limit myself to that? So I'm all about, getting dirty, like getting the hard work in, like elbow grease is a huge thing because it really does develop your character and like your personality and who you want to be. I don't ever want to be a woman that just shows up entitled and not doing the work type of thing. So I'm like, hey, like I bring all of these things to the table and I will do the work, if not beyond and more. So, treat me right, I'll treat you better type of thing. So that's something that I try to bring into my personal and professional, like kind of sector. And I hope that others can get that way too, like
yeah.
why sell yourself short? Because I did that for too long and that kept me, that was very limiting, obviously. So,
Yeah, I love that. And when I left the military too, like I had a mindset that you have to, you know, I wasn't looking for a job, I was looking for a purpose. Because at the end of the day, the military provides a purpose for you. Like I will never lie that when I drove to work every day in the army, like I felt part of something, part of a purpose that was so much deeper than even now that I work, it won't relate. It's close enough, but it
Yeah.
won't relate. And that's what you're looking for. So don't look for a job, look for a purpose, look for a belonging, look where you can make a difference each and every day. And if you can do that, like you can make it through. And I think a lot of veterans look at other things like, salary, specifics, locations, where I
Titles.
live. And trust me, I've been through that with veterans. They're like, I ask them when I do veterati, I'm like, okay, cool. So I need to know right now, like, what are you open to? Like, you want a job? Are you nationwide? Nope. Why? Well, my family. Okay, cool. So that limits you. That limits you, dude. Like that limits you. Like you're not nationwide. Where are you? Statewide? No, no. You need to get a job by your house, 5 miles from your house, like you were in the military. Okay, well, that's going to limit you even more. Like what's
Mhm.
near you? Like, okay, let's not even talk about that. Like, what's your purpose? What do you want to do? Like, what if I told you that you could be given something that you're so passionate about and you have to travel to do? Would you still do that? Nope. Well, you're not in the right mindset.
Yeah.
Not in
Yeah,
the
that's
right mindset.
huge.
Like,
Absolutely huge.
not in the right mindset. And I can help you as long as you want, but like, I can't, fly to Charleston, South Carolina and help you find a job near where you live, man. Like,
Right, like, you can bring a horse to water, you can't force
yeah,
it to drink. Yeah.
like you got to figure out exactly what you want to do and then go
Yeah.
search for that. And guess what? Your family will follow you. Your kids will follow you. Everything is going to follow you. And that's how you need to search on it. Because guess what? In the military, if they followed you this far, they're going to follow you to wherever the fuck you go after.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
that's so true. Yeah.
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 So why are you so worried about like, oh, the job's in California. It's a great job. It pays well, but you can't move there. I'm like, why?
Right.
Who doesn't want to move there? You like, and I'm not getting into your personal business, but like, why?
What was your key, into this, like, self-discovery to, like, really find your full potential, like, again, personally and professionally?
Yeah. So for me, I went through a divorce around 2017, and my son was still with me at the time. I worked for a company, and they offered me a position in Washington D.C. I had to make my son, who was in high school, at 10th, 11th grade, move and
Yeah.
do all of that and move from like his friends. But I knew that it was going to be the best thing for him and the best opportunity for him. So I did that. Right. And that may not fit into everyone's like decisions. But for me, like I communicated that to him and said, listen, this is the best decision for us. And although you don't see that right now, like this is what needs to happen. This is for a career path. This is for this. It's going to benefit all of us. He got into a better school district, like got into a whole bunch of better things for himself, had like new friends, like all those things, but he didn't see that vision. So I think it's like creating that vision, like not only about getting a job, but like what does this lead to for all of us? What's it
Mm,
lead to? Is it just more money? Because if it's more money, then screw it.
yeah.
But if it's more like opportunity for everybody, if it's a different area and like, there's, your kids are going to go to a better school, they're going to, have better outcomes, like all of that, you have to consider that and make that decision, even though it's something that's counter to whatever everybody
Yeah.
else thinks.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we can get really comfortable in wanting to, like, swim in the same stream as everyone else, but life kind of deviates us into little other smaller streams, and we can't always kind of look to our right and left for guidance, unfortunately. But I'm really glad that you took those circumstances and you made the best out of it, like you mentioned. Like it wasn't just for the money. Like there was way more positives that were coming with that blessing. It just took that patience and that time and that work to get there. So I really applaud you on doing that. Being a parent is freaking hard, man. So you seem to be doing a really great job at it. You told me some stuff that your son's getting into. I'm sure you are so proud. So
He's 20. He's in the infantry. He's stationed in Hohenfels, Germany. So he's a good kid. Yeah.
yeah, I bet he's loving that. And
Oh yeah.
I feel like there's also probably like a sense of pride in seeing your son kind of follow somewhat similar footsteps. And I'm like, I can't imagine the kind of guidance that you're giving him because of all of the experience that you've had. And like, again, you keep yourself so humble that it's like,
Like I'm kind of a good dad, which I am, but I'm also kind of like my advice to my son is like, bro, like I was a Green Beret in the military, so like if anything ever happens, I'm the first person you should call.
Right. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
that's even
Like,
cooler that he has that
like,
in his
like,
back
bro,
pocket type of
like,
thing. Yeah.
listen, I'm no longer like a disciplinarian. Like, I'm no longer like, you're not under my roof. I don't have to feed you and like worry about you. Like, you're a man. So, like, trust me, if whatever the fuck happens, you promise me I'm the first person you call, man.
Yeah. Wow.
But
And
yeah,
do you give him any kind of like career advice, or are you like hoping that he kind of makes his own, or like are you hopeful that he does try out for special forces, or like how do you feel about that?
yeah. I mean, you know what I told him is, I honestly told my son this, and I go, do not walk in my path. Do not try to do what I did. Do not, become a Green Beret or a Ranger or think that you need to do that because I love you, because I already love you. Like,
Mm,
I already love you. You don't have to do any of that. Like, none of that matters. If you do that, then that's cool, dude, because you did it because you wanted to do it. I walked my path, and you as a man have to walk your own path. And whatever that is, I support you.
yeah.
And whether you're a Ranger or a Green Beret or anything, it doesn't matter to me, dude. So I told him that. So and then also when he got out of the mill, when he got out of basic training, I linked him up with my financial advisor. I made sure that like he was investing money as a younger soldier that a
Yes.
lot of younger soldiers don't do. So
Yeah.
made sure that he was doing that, and he was setting himself up for retirement. And um, if I could change anything about the military, it would be that. I don't think the soldiers get enough financial education, especially, privates who have no family, who not no family, but like a wife, a kid, and stuff like that. Like, what are they
Right.
doing with their money each week? Can we
Mm,
allocate that somewhere else? I think they need to be more educated in basic
yeah.
training and all that stuff. So he never had that. So I set him up with a financial advisor that I have and like made him invest money. So he's already investing money already. So that's one of the biggest tips of advice that I gave him. And he asked me that. He goes, Dad, when you joined the military, we were the same age. What advice did you wish you had? And I told him that's the advice I wish I had.
Wow. Yeah, and that I mean that is so important because it doesn't matter if you're getting E1 pay or like
Yeah.
E8.
What's $200 to a private
Yeah.
at the end of the
Yeah.
day? And then how much is that going to make him, when he's, my age, 40?
Right, and that's just I mean, that's just the type of guidance that you're giving because obviously, like, you don't want him to be, scrambling for spare change in between paychecks, like how a lot of
Sure.
young Joes are.
For
A
sure.
lot of it would go to like, eating fast food or, and
Yeah.
beer and alcohol. Like, I remember having staff duty and like just on a Friday night,
Oh,
just seeing
pizza and
everyone
all that shit.
everyone come in with
Oh,
all
yeah.
of that stuff and it adds up. So it's like, hey, for sure, treat yourself, but if it comes
Allocate
to the
something to your future.
it's really cool that you can do that, like, as a father and as a leader, so I feel
Oh,
like
I appreciate
he's
that.
yeah, that's, like, a huge thing. I feel like a lot of folks who have done, cool guy shit, some of their kids, like, think that they have to do exactly that to be accepted, but the fact that you mentioned that you love your son, like, regardless and despite it, and you want him to pursue his own kind of journey is
Yeah.
very beautiful because I don't really hear a lot of that. I
No,
hear
I
a
was
lot.
big on that with him, and trust me, if you ever talk to my son, like I told him that, like, you don't have to do that stuff for me to love you. I already love you,
Yeah.
dude. Like, you do whatever you need to do. Make your statement in the world. Do it your own way. Like I did it my own way, and trust me, there's a lot of bumps and bruises and crashes that happen along the way.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
it's the same's going to happen for you. So don't feel like you have to follow my path, or that if you don't, that I'm going to be upset with you or not love you anymore. And I think for kids, they need to know that, right?
Yeah.
And when they take on a career, for anybody,
Mhm.
military or anything, like you don't have to. If your dad's a doctor, you don't have to be a doctor. Like
Yeah, yeah,
lawyer, like all that. I think there's a lot of pressure in society right now that you have to do that.
yeah, and it can be a little more harmful than, coming from,
Good.
like, a place of
Good.
well-meaning, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
so
be a
what
productive citizen. Don't be a dick. Like,
Yeah,
like pay your bills, do shit like that, but don't be a freaking shithead.
yeah, I mean, 100%. 100%. But what else like kind of motivates you to keep going? Like again, like
Yeah, for me, it's leading teams differently. And I love the fact that if I can translate that from the military into corporate America and show that, I can do that, I think that it can change the perspective of veterans in corporate America and also allow them to translate the fact that any position I've been in, I've always made my team better. I've always learned skills. I've always had a great
mm,
team. So if I can do that, like I'm representing a lot of veterans. And in special forces, we always say eagle, eagle for the first one in the door. So for me, it's like I want to kick in the door and let a bunch of people in. So if I can do that and like create that avenue and be that person, like maybe there's an interview and they're like, oh, I was a Green Beret. And then someone's like, oh, wait, I knew one. Like they killed it. Like, yes,
mhm.
awesome. Like I know what you bring to the table. That's where we need to be. Like we need to be changing, the discussion around all of that.
Yeah, for sure. Did you ever feel like maybe your mentality and your way of thinking wasn't always appreciated at first in corporate America? You did mention that you worked for like Fortune 2 and 4 companies. Like what was that like?
Yeah, it's still not appreciated. Yeah.
Fuck.
But I mean, you can be professional
But they're
and
results oriented, aren't they?
yeah, you get
Okay, yeah.
results and you say, hey, listen, we may have a different, that's diversity, right?
Mm.
And that's everything. In the military, we have diversity. We have people from all walks of life.
Oh
Corporate
yeah.
America has the same thing. I may think differently from you. I may talk differently from you. I may act differently from you, but
Mm.
I can get the same results as you. And that doesn't mean like I'm burning the bridge or burning the place down. It's just
Mm.
we think differently. So you have to own who you are, right? You have to be who you are and carry that into like results and deliver. And I mess around with that. In the military, my metrics as special forces, to your point in the beginning of this, was like you killed people. Now my metrics are like, hiring people, like doing different things. So that's an easier metric for me to make. I may get there differently, but it doesn't mean that my way of getting there is, wrong or counter to the corporate America. They have their leadership principles, which is very similar to the military principles. Just
Mhm.
follow the principles and you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a really great way to put it, but I'm glad that you were like, honest about that because I feel like that can definitely be like a clash or some folks can just kind of like see you as just intimidating without even hearing you, you know what I mean? So the fact that you can kind of show up and still be heard despite a differentiating perspective is awesome. But I think it's also like how you said, it's the way you say it and like the tact
Yeah.
because obviously like you can't go into your new office or workplace like dropping the f-bomb and screaming at people's faces and stuff like that. I mean, if only, but
Well, yeah, to your point, true. Like as a Green Beret, like with me and many Green Berets out there, like we walk in with Special Forces, Ranger, Airborne tabs. We walk into like the embassy, like we are subject matter experts. No one's going to challenge us. No one's going to like anything we say is good. So like when you bring that, and that's just a select community, you bring that into corporate America, that could be looked at differently because you're going to be challenged. You're going to be, they don't know any of that about you. So how do you navigate that? How do you work through that? And that's also the military as well, right? If
mm,
you're, infantry or whatever, you were with a commander and you made all these decisions, you may get into corporate America where people are like, I don't care that you were a commander in Iraq. Like we
yeah.
have to drive sales right now. So what the hell are you going to do, dude? Like, and you have to answer to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how do you translate that and be like, well, we're going to put a squad on the objective and cordon it off? No, they're not going to go for that shit.
They're gonna like look at you cross-eyed, like, what did you
Right.
just say?
Yeah.
Did you ever find any difficulties with like working folks that were the same age or younger than you? Um,
No, for me, no,
yeah.
I never found that. I think for me, the biggest like conflict was being military and civilian,
Okay.
never like
Yeah.
an age thing.
Okay,
And
that's
that could
good.
be me too, because I'm more like, you know, I had a kid at a young age, like I was 19 when I had my son. So I'm more kind of involved in like my son's like, oh, Snapchat, like stuff like I'm kind of more in tune to things, I guess, like as an older dude, because I'm 40. Like, yeah, I'm more in tune to stuff like that because my son's age. But no, I've never had that with it's been more the military thing than the age thing.
Oh, okay, that's good. I felt like, I mean, I
That's
kind
just
of
me
ran
specifically.
into, yeah, and that's really good. I felt like I didn't necessarily run into that too much, but with some of my other friends that were transitioning, it was, and we weren't sure if it was a matter of just like generational differences, or just possibly again just being intimidated by what's on paper and our experience instead of just seeing it as more of like, hey, like I'm a tool for you to use, like I'm a part of the team. I'm not this outlier that you think I am type of thing. And that's where, you come into play with translating things properly and making sure that you can show up as what they need. Um,
Yeah.
but
And it's not necessarily showing up as what they need. I think it's showing up as like, this is my identity and who I am, and then what I can offer to you. And a lot of veterans don't view it that way. Like, here's what I can offer. I can promise you that I've never, or sorry, people that work in your company have never been in a firefight
mm,
with, 20, 30 soldiers on the line and we're running down the line getting bullets shot at them.
yeah,
No one in your company is going to offer you that. And the fact that I have that experience and the fact that I was communicating on 3 different like comms channels to like aircraft commanders, all this stuff, and like communicating different things like things, updating commanders on briefs, all that stuff. No one's ever going to be able to offer you that. That doesn't mean they're less than me. That's what I bring to the table.
right.
And I'll tell
Absolutely.
you that that is something that any company needs.
Yeah, exactly. I feel
Any
like,
company
again, I
needs,
see it as just like
regardless
a
of who
big
you
puzzle
have on your
piece.
team. You
Yeah.
want someone like me on your team. I'm not going to like fight with them. We're only going to make each other better. And you want someone like me on your team because of the experience and the diversity that I have, because you'll never have anyone on your team that's been through what I've been through. And then if
Yeah.
veterans can translate that, it's so much value to organizations because they're like, wow, you could pay tens of millions of 20 of millions of dollars to put your team through what veterans go through at war,
Yeah.
and they'll
Yeah.
never be able to recreate it.
For sure. Like the potential that they hold is, I mean, astonishing. It's just a matter of putting that into the best terms to get you to that best job or gig or
Yeah.
passion or project that that you want to do. But Ricky, like, wow, this has been mind-blowing, and just so helpful. Is there anything else that you would like to leave me or the audience with like any advice or any takeaways? um
Yeah.
Maybe a beautiful.
Yes, you're awesome. And thank you. The last thing I'll leave, we didn't get this in.
Oh yeah,
Um,
let's do it.
Current earning potential doesn't matter what
Ooh,
you're going to earn right now.
okay.
Look at your future earning potential. What can you earn in the future? Right. So, whatever, instead of worrying about how much money you're going to make, how much money can you make to survive? Then work from that number. And if you have like a mentor
Mm,
and like upper progression and, more salary in the future, even if it's 1 or 2 years, and it fits into what you want to do and your purpose, you need to do that. Don't worry about your current earning potential. A lot of veterans do that. They want to get out of the military and make what they're making or make double what they're making, or to your point, like their value's so high and they don't want to humble themselves. If you can
right.
just get yourself into worrying about your future earning potential, you're going to be in a lot better state.
Oh yeah, that was actually one of like the biggest things that I highlighted from our conversation was the current and the future. And I'm really glad that you brought that up because, again, like take that pay cut if you need to, get by, you can budget, like you're capable, like if you need to struggle for a little bit and just like live off your savings, like and if you're able to do that, but I feel like that if they don't know that, then they won't fully, I
Well,
mean,
yeah, and a lot of veterans aren't going to struggle, right? Like if they're retired or they're getting a pension or something, like that's a different story. But if you can take that pay cut for a while and still survive and pay all your bills, grind it out and do it. As long as you have a leader that's going to help you and it's going to lead to a better position in the future. Because even if you get that government contract job or you get something, it may not lead to sustainability. Sustainability is like building yourself through like corporate America, which is what I've been able to do because of that. Like I took
Yeah.
lower pay cuts, I took lower things, built myself, built my value, built who I am. And I've done those things by humbling myself and doing that. And if more veterans would do that, they would find themselves more successful.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I will say, like, yeah, I actually I am retired as well, but I never saw that compensation and pension as like my ticket to not work or anything like that. If anything, I was like, okay, well, that'll help with some things, but I need a little more to keep going. And that was okay to say, but I think some folks get a little too comfortable with that
Right.
or just don't do anything with it. They're not
Right.
saving. And
Or they
I
even
mean,
go hyperbole and they're like, oh, I need to make six figures. And they're like,
yeah,
oh, you're
yeah.
already
And then
retired. What if the job you get makes only 40, 50K, but it's a great job? You have a great leader, and then it's really aligned with your degree and all these things. Like it could lead to so much more.
I implement that same mentality on like, okay, um, I'm doing this job. I'm not necessarily getting paid the most right now, but if I can, prove myself to them, then there will be opportunities for bonuses
Mhm.
and,
Mhm.
pay increase. And that is okay. Like I remember one of my former bosses kind of telling me like, "Hey, like I could replace you with some dude from Pakistan for pennies on the hour." And I'm
Right.
like, "Fuck, bro, like I got to step it up." So I make
Yeah.
sure that I earn my paycheck. I earn my
Right.
pay. I earn whatever I'm making.
Well, a lot of veterans may not think that way.
But it's with the conversations that you and I are having to kind of like get them to
Drive
see
that.
that so that we can kind of help them also succeed and get better. Because I don't know, I've seen a lot of people like on the, up and up and they like get really into their head, their ego, and they don't necessarily help anyone else out. And I really admire the folks that have gotten to the top, but they look to their right, their left, and they look behind them and they're like, "Hey, let me help others get here too," because it's lonely at the top, honestly. And it's just more fulfilling if you can help other people get there. Like everyone can get a piece of the pie type of thing. So I definitely see that in you, Ricky, and I really admired that. So I'm just so glad that you wanted to come on the podcast and share that because I want other veterans, other folks to succeed. Like you and I have definitely struggled and have been through some stuff, but and everyone's journey is like that too. And especially after COVID and all that jazz, like I love seeing people happy, successful, like making it and doing their best and showing up. And the fact that you and I can have this convo and get people to realize their worth is like, I'm just so amped.
You're awesome, and I appreciate meeting you. And I'll tell you, like, for me, it's not about getting to the top. Like, I'll keep that Green Beret mentality. That's just who I am, a door kicker. I kick in the door. So once I get in, everyone fucking else behind me is coming in. Like
I
that's
love
my
that so
mentality.
much.
Like I'm bringing
Yeah.
every veteran into the scene. So you're awesome. Well, I loved meeting you, and I think we were meant to meet for stuff like this. And you're awesome. I want you to keep grinding, and we are going to share this and all of that. And I'm so
Yeah, for
thankful
sure.
you gave me this opportunity, my first podcast. So this is
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm so glad. I'm so thankful. And if folks want to get in touch with you, is that
Yeah,
okay? Like,
first name dot last name at hotmail.com. That's the best way to reach me.
okay, awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Ricky, and I really appreciate you and all of your knowledge and experience, and just again coming on here and sharing that. So,
And tell them on Veterati, like every Friday, I have 2 hours open where they can get
ooh,
with me. And any veteran, like I don't want to, a overwhelming amount of emails with like,
right,
resumes, but like on
yeah,
Veterati, I legit set up hours every Friday for people to get on my calendar, and I spend specific time with your development, like your goals, all of that for
that's awesome.
soldiers. And I help with resumes, I help with interviewing. I've got at least 7 soldiers since I've been doing it, hired into jobs, making six figures, all that. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's wonderful news. I love
help
hearing
with
that so much. And
professional. Yeah,
yeah, thank you, Ricky. Will you send me a text or how to spell that so that I can
of
promote
course.
that properly? Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Resilient Rowdy Gang. This was Ricky Deering, and hit him up if you've got any questions. And
Yeah.
so yeah, check him out. Hit him up if you'd like to. And yeah, thank you again, Ricky, for joining me.
Resilient Rowdy, keep grinding.
Yeah.
Bye.